Hello there, welcome back to Jennie Designs with Paper. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. I have a birthday card for you, so get comfy and let's get crafty. So this is a card, the supplies I'm using for this card were decided by my spreadsheet and a random number organizer, and the brand it chose was Penny Black, and this is the potted flower stamp set. It also chose an embossing folder. So I'm using this vine embossing folder that I picked up at Joann's a zillion years ago. The color palette comes from this pattern paper, although I will not be using the pattern paper on my card. And the extra is these flat back pearls from Honeybee Stamps. And then the theme was birthday. So I pulled a birthday stamp set or birthday sentiment out of my stash. I will be coloring these with these Zig clean color pens. They're not the real brush markers. They have a nib on them, and I'll be using Bristol paper because that is like the best for the brush nib. And when we get to the coloring, we'll chat about that a little bit. So I'm using the Bristol paper. I'm stamping in Versaclear Nocturne Black ink, and then I will heat set it with some clear embossing powder just to keep that black ink from spreading. That's not the right word I was looking for, but that's the word we're going with. And this stamp is a better size for a landscape style card, which you would think that would not be a difficult thing, but it ends up causing my brain some problems. Because I am heat setting the stamped image, I will put a little bit of, what is that called? Powder. My brain is crazy. I'm putting a little bit of powder down to prevent the embossing powder from sticking from anything but the ink. So I'm going to go ahead and use my Misty. I did take the black foam pad out because this is a red rubber stamp, and I'll be using clear embossing powder over this black ink. So I'm going to go ahead and use a spoon to spoon the embossing powder over my stamped image. And once I have that all covered in embossing powder, you can tell that it's covered because that black ink kind of gets dull, and then you know that the embossing powder has set when it's shiny again. And I did have my heat tool warming up off to the side as I was getting the embossing powder on the page. So we're going to talk about a few things. I did speed this coloring up like 5 times normal speed because there's nothing really outstanding about it other than I'm using these pens for the first time. These pens, so I have some Zig pens that are clean, are the brush markers, the real brush markers, and these nib markers work differently. It's really great to have that tiny, like the writing nib on one end and then a larger nib on the other, so I could get into some really small spaces. I did not spend too much time working on, like I didn't color these butterflies one section of the wing at a time. I didn't really work too hard on getting dimension on each petal of each flower. Excuse me. I just put color down and then used the blender brush to smear that color around. So a couple of things I noticed with the nibs versus the brush pens. I think more pigment comes out with the brush pen, so you can use a lighter color or the blender pen to spread that pigment farther. I don't think that the nib pens, for some reason, they didn't seem to blend as well on this Bristol paper as the brush pens did. And that could just be, well, 2 things. It could be that there's less pigment coming out. It could also be that my blending pen is starting to dry out. I probably need to check my stash and see if I have another one or order another one. Because there was not a lot of ink that came out, and this stamp is quite, has a lot of detail in the drawing itself. I just put darker color in, blended it out with a lighter color, and then blended it out with the blending pen. I did not really try to do, like I said, each petal or each section of the butterfly wing. I did notice when I got to the bigger sections, like the pots, that the smaller amount of pigment that came out really was a bigger issue. I had to work it harder to get the look I was going for. And to be fair, I'm still not in love with how the pots turned out, but I don't hate them either. So we're going to let that go. I picked 2 color combinations of markers that kind of went with that pattern paper that I pulled for our color palette. That pattern paper is an old Stampin' Up! One. I don't know how long I've had it. Probably forever and ever. It might be older than some of my children. Who knows? I mean, it's been 5 years since I placed an order with Stampin' Up! Or more than 5 years, because I think it was before COVID. And then it was for cardstock, not stamps or pattern paper. So I don't know. It's been a long time since that paper was in my stash. The markers. There was something else I wanted to say about the markers, and I can't remember what it is, so maybe it'll come back to me. I do want to chat about the spreadsheet a little bit. This combination, the penny black, the embossing folder, and then the birthday theme specifically, was a little bit harder. So I think I'm going to make another column that has so one will have the brand, and then the next column will have either stamp, embossing folder, dies, and I'll take those out of the technique and add them to, I'll make a product category, because I had to pick a technique a couple of times. For penny black, I only have a couple of stamps. I think the technique that came up first was hot foil. And I felt like because I don't have any penny black hot foil, that would have been that's a good technique, but I don't have every brand doesn't have hot foil things, and I don't have something hot foil for every brand. So I did have to draw another, or have the randomizer pick me another number for the technique. So I think I'm going to separate the technique into 2 categories, and one will be a product, and then one will be an actual category. And I'm, like pattern paper and stencils and dies and embossing folders. Those are all techniques, those are all products rather. But interactive cards and background stamps, those are kind of more of a technique. Pattern paper could be a technique, but it's also a product. So going back to the coloring on these pots, you can see that it really was hard to get those edges darker than the center and have it blend nicely, even with the 2 colors. And especially the turquoise, because this package of pens only had 1 turquoise color. I feel like though, even the brown, even though I pulled in a lighter skin tone brown to kind of get that center, the pigment still just really did not want to move. So I think I'm going to use it on a different kind of paper and see what happens. Now here is my next big whoopsie. In my brain, I know that this is a landscape card, which means it is 5.5 inches long instead of tall. And when I trimmed it down, I totally mathed bad. I trimmed this down on the sides to make it a portrait style card. Okay, so I decided, okay, I'm not going to think about this right now. I'm going to emboss this green paper with my embossing folder while I figure out what I'm going to do. Because my plan was to make this a landscape card, because that's the way the stamp goes. And here you can see that beautiful detail in the embossing, or the embossed paper. And I really can't cut that panel down anymore and have it be a landscape card and not cut things off. And then I figured, as long as I'm cutting things off, and because of the way I trimmed it the first time, I'm going to have to cut this down to make a portrait style card. And note to self, you don't have to use the entire stamped image. Hello. I just chopped off that right-hand side, and I cut it down to be a smaller panel on this embossed powder or embossed paper. And then I'm going to use the piece I cut off to stamp the sentiment. I'm also going to be heat embossing that sentiment as well, just so that the black ink doesn't smear. So I'm going to stamp it again. It just says birthday wishes. I'm going to stamp it in that burst of clear black ink. Then I'm going to put some clear embossing powder on it and heat set that with my tool. And I did stamp it twice. I don't think I got a very good impression the first time. And I'm going to stamp that off, or wipe that off. Oh my gosh, you guys, words are hard and my brain is not functioning today. Anyway, I'm going to wipe off the extra, tap off the extra embossing powder, and then heat set that. And then I'm going to go ahead and put this card together. So I'm using a side folding white card base. This is a US A2 size card, which means it is 5 1/4 inches tall by 4 1/4 inches wide, or 5 1/2 by 4 1/4. I trimmed down that green paper to be a 1/4 inch smaller on each side. That's my norm. And then this center card is like an inch smaller than the card, kind of ish. It is still off a little bit, and it's not exactly the right dimensions. Like there's more margin on the top and bottom than there are on the sides, but it works okay. So I'm going to use, I trimmed our sentiment strip down. I did that off camera because, well, I keep forgetting to zoom out far enough that you can see what I'm doing on my desk. And I put some foam tape behind our sentiment. I'm going to put this off the right. I'm going to have it come off that stamped panel just a little bit. It kind of anchors the panel to the background. And then I'm going to add some of these turquoise honeybee flat-backed pearls. I chose turquoise to go with the pots just to add that color in one more place. I'm adding 2 groups, a group of 3 and a group of 2, which sometimes makes my heart happy and sometimes make my brain hurt. So here is a close-up of the card. It did turn out great even though I mathed bad. So thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I have a couple other videos here I think you would like. I've also added that subscribe button. If you haven't subscribed, I would love it if you did. Leave me a comment down below and tell me how well you math when you're stamping and card making. Give me a thumbs up if you like the video and have a really great day.